All right. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. It's Sunday afternoon, the 14th of March, 2021. I'm going to wait a few minutes, make sure everybody gets here. Uh, we're going to talk about, I was so upset on Twitter today with all the things that are going on with the military and the police, coming down on the citizens for trying to exercise their rights because of these politicians pushing so much nonsense. We have military occupation in D.C. It's all walled off. They're really afraid of us. They're really afraid of us now. And of course, they're getting ready to do some really nasty stuff. They already have on the First Amendment, and they're getting ready to do more on the Second. As a matter of fact, the House just passed some very strict gun laws, and there is no Constitution anymore. Legal Man talks about, if you follow him on Twitter, talks about the Constitution's dead. We're going to have to just seize our rights and resist any infringements on them in the name of ourselves and our God, because government has violated its social contract with us and is not abiding by the Constitution at all. So it's dead. So we're going to have to do it locally, as David Knight has talked about and several others. But that's not why I'm here tonight. I'm here because I was so upset today. I had to decide if I wanted to talk about something a little more spiritual for us. Yes, stay strong for everyone. Paul is natural. Appreciate that. Welcome as you all come in. This is a quick setup. I was thinking about recording it so that we could have, one thing, a little better sound. But I decided to do a live stream because I think it's important to get up because Sunday's almost over with. And I kind of want you to think about these things. I'm going to introduce you to some things today that are going to be way outside traditional Christianity. No surprise there. That's what I do. You have to understand that I look at the Old and New Testaments as a single thing, and that the euphemisms of 2 to 3 to 4, even 5 millennia ago are not the way that we look at them today. And I, I decided that one of the important things to know about is this subject here that I'm going to discuss. James and John. Sorry about my handwriting. My pen kind of gave out. So I've got to go with what I've got. James and John, they were referred to as the sons of Zebedee and the sons of thunder in the New Testament. We're going to give you some quotes on that here in just a minute. But that's going to be the subject matter, and you'll see why in just a minute. About a week ago or so, I noticed that somebody in my Twitter line came on either the DM or it was in notifications and wanted to know what Gesenius to use, which is the Hebrew lexicon. Well, there's Gesenius is the Hebrew lexicon, but I thought I'd go ahead. I showed this before, but I thought I'd show it tonight again. There it is. It's just called Gesenius Hebrew Lexicon. Okay, and you can get the page. This is a very old book. This is from the early or late 1800s, early 1900s. I forget. And it's kind of a treasure of mine. You can see I've used it, and it is falling apart. The pages are starting to disintegrate, but I still use this old one. I do have a paperback one, but I didn't have it handy right at the moment. So if you want to get a Hebrew lexicon, this is the one you want to get. If you want to get a Greek lexicon, you'll want to get a Thayer's probably. And you can also get, instead of a Strong's, you can get a Brown Driver and Driggs. Driggs, yeah. Which is also very similar to Strong's and uses the same kind of background. I don't have a Strong's in here today. It's not going to be important for what we're talking about. But the Hebrew lexicon basically gives you the Hebrew words and then gives you the meaning of them, okay? So you can kind of see what that is, okay? And I'll set this aside now, but for those of you who are asking, there's only one Gesenius, okay? There are other Hebrew lexicons, but this is the one I use, okay? Because it's the most dependable. Okay, I'm going to set that aside, and we're going to get into some other information here. I want to show you another book before I get started. Uh, I don't know that he'd call me a colleague, probably not, but when I was doing my studies in Hebrew and the Dead Sea Scrolls, and before I wrote the book, The Crimson Thread, The Struggle to Become Jesus During the Revolt Against Rome, uh, there were several texts that I used. Of course, I went through the Dead Sea Scrolls. I read Eusebius, for instance, and Epiphanius, Pliny, Josephus, etc., 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 Irenaeus, all of those. Um, and I also studied some of the things that were put out by the Bibliothèque Nationale and the scholars that surrounded that on the Dead Sea Scrolls. But I also took up this gentleman here. This is Robert Eisenman. Dr. Robert Eisenman was the archaeologist, ancient historian that was able to sue the Bibliothèque Nationale and the Israeli Antiquities Authorities and get the Dead Sea Scrolls available to you. Okay. And he's done extensive works. This is just one of them. He did James, the brother of Jesus, and also this one, and like I say, several others. But this was the one I grabbed real quick to have handy: the New Testament Code, Gospels, Apostles, and the Dead Sea Scrolls. It's a very thick book. Uh, let me tell you how many pages it has, and this doesn't include the appendix and all of that. It's about looks like, yeah, about 600 pages just in the text, and you can see how thick that is. I've got it marked where I'm doing some things that we're not going to talk about today, but there's a lot of difficulty with traditional Christianity understanding the Dead Sea Scrolls, and I've kind of talked about that in the past, not so much lately to individuals I have. But there was a big disagreement on the Dead Sea Scrolls, whether they were written all prior to the first century during the Maccabean dynasty, which would have been about, say, 100 BC to about 50 BC, something like that. Actually, about 10 BC. And and there was a reason why they wanted to keep it in prior to the first century, both the Israeli Antiquities Authority and the Bibliothèque Nationale, because the Dead Sea Scrolls show what was really going on in the first century. And if they admitted to that, it would cause some problems with some doctrine and dogma that appeared in the church in the first and actually in the second and third centuries. That's why I say this can get people very upset. The key to what the New Testament is really about is found in a place called Qumran, where the Dead Sea Scrolls were found. And it has to do not just with the Essenes, but the family of Jesus. If I don't know if this book is still in print, if it is, you might want to get it. It's going to challenge you. It's going to put you in a place where you wonder what in the world's going on. But I got to tell you that if you're not willing to look at things like this, your faith is weak anyway. So you need to know how the euphemisms work, how the evidence, the historical evidence matches up with the gospel stories, and particularly the Pauline epistles, because there's some problems. I'm just going to tell you there are. Okay, there just are. But anyway, I'll leave this with you again. It's Robert Eisenman. I think you can see it there, hopefully. And this is called the New Testament Code. This is, I think he wrote like 4 or 5 books, and they're all scholarly. I mean, the bibliography is just immense in these. Matter of fact, I helped on the bibliography on this one. He asked me to assist on it. So let me put that aside so that you know that this isn't just stuff that I'm dreaming up. These are things I have actually studied for decades. Okay? And the reason why I want to talk about James and John, who they're called the sons of thunder and the sons of Zebedee, and there's been a lot of scholarly discussion, so-called scholars, about what this is. But what got me going on this was I read a thing today where it said that the sons of Zebedee, that Zebedee was a Greek word, that it came from a Greek root. And that's not true. It's not true at all. As Dr. Robert Eisenman would tell you, there's been a lot of obfuscation especially in the New Testament scholarship. There's been a lot of misunderstanding. There's been a lot of doctrinal and dogma issues that had, sacred cows that had to be protected. And there was even issues about when, for instance, the Gospels were written. I think most scholars will tell you, even traditional scholars in Christianity will tell you that the book of Mark, for instance, the Gospel of Mark, was not really written until 60 AD, some almost 30 years after these events about Jesus had already occurred, 30 years prior. And that was the earliest gospel. And then there are all kinds of other things. And the Dead Sea Scrolls come into this because it shows what the mindset and the understandings of the people in that era were. And the reason why they don't want the Dead Sea Scrolls to show up in the first century is because it does put to the sword, basically, a lot of traditional concepts about how Christianity was found in the first century. But I can tell you, if you read Dr. Eisenman's book or study this in depth at all, you'll find out that the Dead Sea Scrolls weren't just about the Maccabees. Or the Romans, the Kittim. They were also about the Herodians, who said they were Jews and were not. Okay, and a lot of the things they were talking about, the fornications and the incest and all that, they were not talking about the Maccabees. They were talking about the Herodians. King Herod and his group. That's who they were talking about, and that's who Jesus was addressing when he said, "They who call themselves Jews and are not." So there's a lot of things. There are a lot of things going on here that a lot of people really don't understand because they try to apply 20 and 21st century euphemisms, and this has been a problem all through history, the last 2,000 years, especially since the Council of Nicaea, when they decided what books of the Bible or what books were going to be put in the Bible. And in the King James, for instance, that was long after the Council of Nicaea, but they decided that, for instance, the books of the Maccabees were not going to be included. Okay, so it wasn't taking things out or putting things in so much as it was taking them out. It really was. And the gospel or the epistle of James, for instance, was a big issue because it didn't follow Pauline principles and they didn't really want that in there. So the epistle of James is extremely important. The epistles of John are very important. And the gospel of John, well, all the gospels are important, but especially John, Mark, and Luke, even more so than Matthew. Regardless of all that, I want to read some scriptures to you. We're going to talk about this. I'll just come out and forthright tell you that when it says, this, first of all, Sons of Thunder has to do with more than just the fact that they were calling fire down from heaven on some problem men. It also has to do with who thunder is. There were the thunder god was known as Yahweh, as most of you would say, Yahweh. It was known as the thunder god. And so this has a lot more implications than just the fact that they were very zealous in the faith, okay? A lot more than that. And I could get into more. By the way, Yahweh is not how you say the name, but because most people understand that, Yahweh, I'll go ahead and use that here. It's the same thing as Jehovah, the Yod He Vav He, that most of you know is usually pronounced Jehovah or Yahweh, as some people would do. Okay, well, let's talk about. I don't want to talk about the sons of thunder right yet. Maybe not at all. The Bonerges, the thunder, has to do even the spelling of that word has a lot to do with revealing what's going on here. These things have been obfuscated. These things are not taught. Sometimes they're in scholarly circles, they're bantered about and argued about. But I'm going to show you what you need to look at here because it's very important and it's going to shake some of you up. I'm just going to admit it. But glory to God on this. I'm not going to say everything. I'm going to let you decide for yourselves. But I want you to show yourselves what I'm talking about here. I'm just going to give you some basics, okay? Okay, so we're going to talk about James and John. Now, the scriptures talk about James and John. Let me read a few of these scriptures to you. And like I say, I don't have this set up for an external microphone. We're having to do it with the phone because I wanted to do this quickly. But before we get into the breakdown of the words, let's read a few verses. We're going to read, first of all, that Jesus had brothers and sisters. Now, the basic idea of the brothers and sisters is that they were in traditional Christian doctrine is that they were either adopted or they were sons and daughters of Joseph's, Joseph and Mary, Joseph's from an earlier marriage. That doesn't match up with the history. I'll just tell you that right up front, okay? In Josephus and some other places, these were all siblings from the same mother and father historically, and Josephus talks about that and why they were the ones who actually got the messianic movement going in Judea around the time of the Maccabees and certainly about the time of the Herodians. But a lot of that I'm going to leave to your own discretion. Okay, you just let this percolate a little bit. Let's read Matthew 13, 55 to 56. Matthew 13, chapter 13, verses 55 to 56. Is not this the carpenter's son? Is not his mother called Mary? And his brethren, James and Joseph, and Simon and Judas. Now in Hebrew, there's no j sound. Okay, it's actually a yod. So it would actually be Joseph, Judah, and it's not even James. It's Yaakov. But when it's translated into the Greek, it turns into James. So let's read verse 56. And his not sister, but sisters. Are they not all with us? Whence then hath this man all these things? That's the first one I want to read to you. Let's go to Mark 6:3. And I know I'm moving fast, but I hope you'll appreciate it that I'm not wasting your time. Mark 6:3. Is not this the carpenter, the son of Mary, the brother of James and Joseph and of Judas and Simon? And are not his sisters here with us? And they were offended at him. Okay? So we're talking about the brothers and sisters being a little upset with their brother, their older brother, who we would know as Jesus. I'll tell you this. My understanding is that this is another obfuscation, that the fact of the matter is that Jesus is actually the brother that's named Joseph. Okay? And if you read my book, The Crimson Thread, you'll understand that maybe. And actually, if you go to my religious and spiritual studies on YouTube here to that tab in the playlist, you can listen to a lot of this and see what's going on here. Joseph is actually kind of a nickname for Joseph. So Jesus' real name, Joshua or Yeshua, is a calling of salvation. Christ is also a calling. It means Mashiach, Messiah, anointed one. His name wasn't Jesus. That's what he was doing. He was Yeshua. He was saving. But that wasn't his name. His real name was Joseph. That was his real name. Okay, and that's who this Joseph is. And I go into it in my book. But let's read some other things. Let's go to Galatians. This is, of course, from Paul, but I'm going to go ahead and read it because it does apply to what we're discussing here. It'll take me just a minute to find it. Galatians 1:19, okay? And this is what it says in 1:19. But other of the apostles saw I none save James, the Lord's brother. You all should be familiar with that. That's Galatians 1:19. All right. Now, with that background, all right, that he had brothers and sisters, and I'm not going to go any further than that right now. Okay, I'm not going to go any further than that right now. I want to go to Mark 3:17. We're going to go back to the Gospels. Mark 3:17. And let me read this to you, because this is where we start talking about the sons of Zebedee. Okay, Mark 3:17. Actually, I'm going to start in 14 because you've got to get the entire idea of what's happening here. And he ordained 12 that they should be with him, and that he might send them forth to preach, and to have power to heal sickness and to cast out devils. And Simon he surnamed Peter. Remember, one of his brothers, as I read there from Matthew and Mark, one of his brothers was named Simon, nicknamed Kepha, or the rock. And James, the son of Zebedee, and John, the brother of James, and he surnamed them Boanerges, which is the sons of thunder. So that's where we get that, okay? And then he goes ahead and he names some other apostles. But the fact that this name Zebedee and Boanerges, but we're not going to talk that much about Boanerges today. We're going to talk about Zebedee, is very important about identifying who these two guys are. They're not unrelated to Jesus. I'm just going to tell you that right now. Okay, let's go to Mark 10:35. Yeah, I really had to do this today after all that crap on there. Our military and our police are turning against us, as are all the politicians. You all know that. And that's why we need this kind of stuff. And we need to put away our false traditions and our false doctrines and our false dogma and really look at things historically, okay? Because it's like science. If it's true, it will carry its own way. It'll cut its own way. But we just can't put dogma before truth, okay? So we're going to break this down. I'm going to show you what I'm talking about. because I've often said that Jesus had more going on in his life than even the Gospels tell you, okay, or the epistles. So let's now go to, let's see, is it Mark 10:35? Is that what I said? Yeah, 10:35. Mark 10:35. And by the way, you who are um, mods on here that are kind of keeping the room clean, thank you so much. As you can tell, when I get involved in this, I don't pay attention. So I really, really appreciate you taking care of me. Eliza Jean and Roosevelt, and I don't know who else is on here, but thank you so much, because I've seen you've already had to delete some things here. Okay, let's go to Mark 10:35 and read it. And it says, "And James and John, the sons of Zebedee, come unto him, saying, Master, we would that thou shouldst do for us whatever we shall desire. And he said unto them," going on to 36, I'm going to read down a little bit. "And he said unto them, What would ye that I should do for you?" Okay. "They said unto him, Grant unto us that we may sit one on thy right hand and the other on thy left hand in thy glory. But Jesus said unto them, Ye know not what ye ask. Can ye think of the cup that I drink? I'm sorry, can ye drink of the cup that I drink of, and be baptized with the baptism that I am baptized with?" There's a reason why he's telling them this. And I'm going to show you a little bit about what that is. Okay, let's go to Luke 9. Again, I want you to study these things out for yourself. I'm just gonna hint to some things, and you take it from there. Okay, you take it from there. Let's go to Luke 9, and let's read verses 53 to 56. Actually, let's start at 52. "And sent messengers before his face, and they went and entered into a village of the Samaritans to make ready for him." Verse 53. "And they did not receive him, because his face was as though he would go to Jerusalem. And when his disciples, James and John, saw this," James and John again, "they said, Lord, wilt thou that we command fire to come down from heaven and consume them, even as Elias did? But he turned and rebuked them and said, Ye know not what manner of spirit ye are of. For the Son of Man is not come to destroy men's lives, but to save them. And they went to another village." Who do these guys sound like? They sound like young upstarts, don't they? They sound like very young men that want to really show how strong they are, not only in the faith, but in their wanting to promote Jesus. Very important to remember that. Okay, let's go to Matthew 20. And I know I'm jumping around here a lot, but I think you'll appreciate it when we get to the final part, which I'll show you on the board here. Matthew 20, verses, I think it's 20. Yeah, I think so. 20, 20 and 21. Let me see if I've got the right ones here. Okay, yeah. Actually, it's sooner than that. Matthew 20, verse 20. "Then came to him the mother of Zebedee's children with her sons." Zebedee's children. We keep talking about this very strange character, Zebedee. "Then came to him the mother of Zebedee's children." It's almost like they're trying to hide some information here. "With her sons, worshiping him and desiring a certain thing of him. And he said unto her, What wilt thou? She saith unto him, Grant that these my two sons may sit the one on the right hand and the other on the left." Okay? Why? Why? Let's now go to Revelations. Let's see, no, that's Matthew 20. Let's go to John. Matthew, Mark, Luke, John, the Gospel of John. I want you all to go back and look at these later. John 21, verse 22. John, the Gospel of John, chapter 21, verse 22. And it says this. Let's go to 21. "Peter, seeing him, saith to Jesus, Lord, and what shall this man do?" Talking about John, that name John, who we're led to believe is somebody else entirely than what the truth is. And in verse 22 it says, "Jesus saith unto him, Peter, If I will that he tarry till I come, what is that to thee? Follow thou me. Okay? I'm going to tie that in to Revelations 10:11 because who he's talking about is John the Revelator. John the Apostle was also John the Revelator. There aren't two Johns, there aren't two James, as most gospel scholars will try to make you believe. There are not. Okay? They're not. The sons of Zebedee and the Apostle John and the Apostle James, the brothers of Jesus. Well, James is the brother of Jesus. John is somebody else, but still related to Jesus. Let's read Revelations 10, verse 11. Okay? Revelations 10, verse 11. And this is tied in directly to what I just read, John 21:22. And he said unto me, so this is John, he's talking about that conversation that Jesus just had with Peter. That what is it to you if he tarry until I come? You follow me. He's going to do his job, right? Well, John admits that that's him here. He says, and he said unto me, thou must prophesy again before many peoples and nations and tongues and kings. Isn't that interesting? Okay, so we've read all the scriptures that I needed to read to you to kind of give you the background of where I'm going with this. Let me put this Bible down. We are a family. Sons of God are his family. And when you read Dr. Eisenman's book and you find out how the early Christians viewed the real concept of Son of God, you'll get an entirely different understanding. But it's not without proof. It's not without evidence. And I'm going to give you some right now. So, Zebedee is not a Greek word. It's not distilled from a Greek word. It's Hebrew. You can go to the Gesenius and you can look these up for yourself. Sons of Zebedee. Zebed is Zayin Beit Dalet. And it means endow, bestow, or even a gift. When you say Zebedee, in Hebrew, you're adding a yod. Now, you can find this in the Gesenius. I don't have a number for you because I took it out of the Gesenius, not out of the Strong's. It's probably in the Strong's as well. But you'll find it in the Gesenius like this. Zebedee is not Greek. Again, it's Hebrew. And it's Zayin, Beit, Dalet, Yod. And it's a possessive. The Yod is a possessive. Like when you talk about a son in Hebrew, it's Bain. But if you're talking about sons, or my son rather, if you're saying my son, it's Beni. Okay? This is saying my gift of Jehovah, my gift of God. Okay? That's what it means, and I've got those here. So the sons of Zebedee, there is no person named Zebedee. It's defining who they are. They are a gift from God. And Jesus is calling them his gift from God. Do you see that? That also puts a whole nother light on who the mother of James and John are, at least a relative. Okay? Now, I'm not going to define, there's no doubt right now that James is actually the brother of Jesus. Okay? The one that I read to you earlier in the family there where it talked about the four brothers. There's no question. His real name is Yaakov. Into the Greek, it goes James. And that's one of the problems of the New Testament. It's hard to follow who the names are and who they really identify to because they garble them, they obfuscate them, partly because of translation errors, partly on purpose. And I'm not going to get into why that was done on purpose, but it was to confuse you, honestly. So it's talking about that Jesus is identifying these people as a gift from God to him. James is his brother. So if that's his brother, who's James' mother? I'm going to propose to you that it's not. James is not a son of the father Joseph and Mary, from another marriage. No. James is his blood brother from his mother and his father. That's going to tick off a lot of Christians with the Virgin Mary and the Immaculate Conception and all that. But I'm sorry. Historically, and the fact that the Dead Sea Scrolls do not talk about it in any other way, and that's why the Bibliothèque Nationale and the Israeli Antiquities Authorities tried to hide the Dead Sea Scrolls for so long. So Jesus is saying that they're a gift from God to him. My gift from God. James, his brother. The only question left is, who was John? Who is John that wrote the Gospel of John, that wrote the epistles of John, and then wrote Revelation? Who was that person really? I'm not going to tell you right now, okay? Because it will do many an injury. I want the Spirit to witness it to you directly, and that's going to take some work. This is so important to understanding why the devil is attacking the Christians today. This is so important as to why the Luciferians, the political establishment, is coming after you. I'll just say this. There was a book written not too long ago called The Da Vinci Code, and a lot of people got upset with it. I'm not saying it's all right, it's all true, or even historical. Okay? I'm not talking about the, hi Nancy, how you doing? Nice to see you. It's not Templar information that I'm talking about. It's not Freemasonry that I'm talking about. It's not. I'm taking it from the original languages. Do you understand? Do you understand? So I want you to think about this. Zebedee is not some man walking around with the name Zebedee. Again, it's Jesus identifying who they are, and the gospel writers identifying who they are. That they are Jesus's gift from God. His brother, James, Yaakov, and he's not a half-brother. Whoever just said that, no, historically it shows he's not a half-brother. I'm sorry. That's the obfuscation and the garbling that you've been told for 2,000 years. Because the Roman Empire was out to destroy the royal line of David, or the royal line of the... There are several messiahs in the Israelite tradition, and I talked about it before. There's the Davidic Messiah, and then there's the Messiah ben Joseph. So there's the Messiah ben David, and then the Messiah ben Judah, and frankly, there's also a Messiah ben Aaron. Okay? Well, I won't get into that now. that's gonna add more conflict here. The point is that Rome was trying to destroy the royal lines so that the messianic zealot movement would be totally destroyed, which they almost succeeded in doing. And I talked about the Perugia at Masada in 73 AD. A little while ago, I discussed that. And I'm not going to get into the Gnostic thing. A lot of the people that were so disenchanted with the fact that the Jews who were disenchanted, the real Jews who felt like God let them down, they had gone to Egypt and started up a place called Nag Hammadi, which was the Gnosticism of the first century, not the Gnosticism of today. Okay, there's a big difference. So I wanted to leave that with you today. I'm not going to dictate to you how the Spirit should tell you anything or what you should look at here, but you have to understand that the obfuscations and the garblings that have gone on for 2,000 years were not by accident. They were there to deceive you so that you would not know your true roots, so that you would not know who your true Heavenly Father is, so that you would not know who your real Savior is. These Jesus identified James and John as gifts from God. James, his brother, became the teacher of righteousness at Qumran, the Essenes. That's who James is. He actually took over the church, and I know there'll be arguments about that, whether that Peter was supposed to be the pope. But James took over as the teacher of righteousness in the first century after John the Baptist was killed by Herod. Herod, Herod the Great's son, Herod Antipater. No, that's not right. Anyway, Antipater is the father. Anyway, the before father. The Herod that cut off John the Baptist's head. Okay. All right. John, as I said a few minutes ago, that opens up another question. And I'm gonna leave it to you to try to figure out what that is. I'm not gonna tell you what it is, but it's somebody that Jesus says was a gift of God to him. And that there is a mother of James, which would then mean that that's the mother of Jesus. However you view James and Peter and all that other stuff that's in there about being half brothers, because they weren't. But for now, if you want to believe that, that's fine. But the point is, he's saying something about James, that he's a gift from God, and he becomes the teacher of righteousness in the Essene community, even during the time that Jesus was still alive, shortly after John the Baptist was beheaded. And that's in Josephus. Okay? Again, John is the big question. Who is John? But he's a gift. Jesus considers him a gift from God. And in those days, remember, okay, I'm going to give you a hint here, and you're not going to like it. You're not going to like it. There was Abraham and Sarah. They had Isaac. Isaac had Jacob. Isaac's wife was Rebekah, who bore Jacob. But Jacob would be very comfortable calling Sarah mother, if you understand Hebrew tradition, Israelite tradition. When Adam's in the Garden of Eden, he names Eve, what? The mother of all living. So you could say that Eve is your mother in Hebraic Israelite understandings. I'm not telling it to you directly. I'm telling you, yes, Sarai was her name when they were in Sumer. And then she became Sarah, a hate, with a window was added to her name. At the same time, God added a hate to Abraham's name, because Abraham's name in Sumer was Abram. Sarah's name in Sumer was Sarai. When God took them away from Sumer, he put Hay's in their name, the letter Hay. Abraham, Sarah, the windows of heaven. The windows of heaven. Sarah means princess. I'm going to leave this there. I want you to look this up. There's going to be a lot of scholarly disagreement about this because they have to hide the fact that Zebedee is not a Greek word. It's Hebrew. It's not Greek. It's not, as I said before, it's not distilled from a Greek word. It's pure Hebrew. And there it is right there. You can find it in the Gesenius Hebrew lexicon. Zebedee, my gift of Jehovah, my gift of God, my gift from God, those kinds of concepts. And Jesus is the one that identified that. Okay. I'm not going to take a lot of questions today on this. This is pretty deep stuff, and I'm showing you that things aren't the way you've been told. I don't care about doctrine. I don't care about dogma. I go back to the original languages because even Paul had to admit, the Apostle Paul had to admit that the scriptures are of no private interpretation. And when you look at the original writings, and when you look at Josephus, and when you look at even the early Catholic commentators like Eusebius and Irenaeus and people like that, they had to make some admissions, but they're very, very careful in the way they do it. Lazarus is another one. Very interesting. Lazarus, yes, another one that's interesting. I'll leave that with you today and just tell you that it really is time for the evil to be exposed, and it's exposed itself. Trump isn't a good guy. He was doing it for selfish reasons, as you'll see before too long. But he did do it. He exposed it. Okay? Problem is he didn't do anything about it. And now it's festering and it's exploding under Biden so that we can be saved by some other man. And that's not what you want to look for. Understand? All right. Look these things up. Okay, yeah, I'm glad he exposed the two lies of Gene. The thing is now, there was the exposure of the evil. What has to happen now? Can anybody tell me what's next? The light of the truth needs to come into your mind and into your heart. Evil is exposed, truth is exposed. And I'm giving you one of the keys right here. All right? Thanks, everybody, for coming. Like I said, I was so distraught by what the military's done and what the intelligence community's done, what our politicians have done, and the war that they're waging upon us. And this is happening all over the world, all on God's children, because we've gone asleep. We've wanted pleasures more than the love of God. We've wanted a bowl of porridge more than our birthright. We have to turn around. And again, whether you believe it or not, this is a key. What did Jesus say? My sheep hear my voice and know who I am. I'll leave it there. Thanks to everybody for coming. We'll see you next time. Good luck in your studies. Do it prayerfully, okay? All right, out here for now. I have to let it sit for a minute so I know that it doesn't get cut off too soon. Good night, everyone.